And now the slides should be up. Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
All right. Let me make them a tad bigger. This is where we left off on Wednesday. Remember, I asked you to outline this section. Number one, dual federalism. And the first subpoint A was an indestructible union, 1789 to 1865. And we finished with subpoint B, dual federalism and laissez-faire capitalism. I know I'm pronouncing that with an American way of pronouncing it and not French, but if someone knows it correctly, you can let us know. 1865 to 1937. We're still calling this dual federalism because the states still, the states were still the primary authorities of government as far as their areas were concerned, but federal power was growing. And so we come to an error with the beginning of, what do we have here, 37. We could say at the end of the 1920s and into the 1930s, they're starting to shift to cooperative federalism, which would be point number 2 in your outline. So number 1 is dual federalism with the 2 subpoints. And then main point number 2 is cooperative federalism. And we'll just use a nice easy date of 1937. And once again, the shift is moving away from states having primary control to a bigger, stronger national government. It is illustrated here with the federal government being at the top tier and the state being underneath it, which it is according to the Constitution, but more federal decisions and laws and actions are starting to seep down and affect the state and society as a whole. There were some triggers that caused this change to cooperative federalism. There was the Wall Street crash in 1929, which also was a trigger for one of the triggers for the Great Depression. When the Great Depression hit, Herbert Hoover was president, a Republican president, but he was such a big believer in states and local control that he would not do hardly anything with the federal government to help people during the Depression. So a lot of poverty set in, a lot of unemployment, and of course the Dust Bowl hit. That hit farmers hard. So it was just about a decades-long period of people losing their jobs, people having to move to a new place to find work. the highest level, one of the highest levels of unemployment, also a high level of poverty. This man right here, Franklin D. Roosevelt, not our man Teddy, but Teddy's, this is a distant cousin, or maybe like a third cousin removed. Franklin was kind of the catalyst for a large scale move to cooperative federalism. In 1932, he was elected. He defeated Hoover, the sitting president, promising that he was going to help Americans get back to work and rebuild American society. So you need to know that his program was called the New Deal. Now, I'm not going to be able to touch on this a lot because we've got to get done in the next 20 minutes. But the New Deal, and there was really a part one and a part two, or some people might say the first New Deal and the second New Deal. But what happened was there was a lot of programs, a lot of federal programs that were developed to help basically get people working and jumpstart the economy. A lot of those programs we know by their acronyms. Some people call them the alphabet agencies. One of them was the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. It employed at least 8.5 million people at an average of $2 a day for 8 years. You guys can probably, right there on your school campus, maybe, maybe not, but if not in your campus, in your town, you can see some buildings that are that were built by the WPA workers. Any of you have a gymnasium that was built by the WPA? It would probably look like it's made out of rock or stones. Everybody have a new gym nowadays? If not, go around town and look for some of those rock buildings. See if you can see the initials WPA on them. That came from this era, the New Deal. And so there was all kinds of agencies that came out of it, dealing with transportation, health, education, poverty. And FDR kind of began a string, not that they weren't, they didn't happen all successively, but it was about a 32 to 68. So about almost a 40-year era that was dominated by these four Democrats. FDR and his New Deal. Franklin Roosevelt died while he was president. His vice president, Harry Truman, took over, and he called his program the Fair Deal. He was going to continue what FDR did, but also passed some laws to stop racial discrimination. Then after Truman, you had a Republican president named Eisenhower. And after Eisenhower, you had JFK. His program was called the New Frontier. He was going to help with more highways, help farmers, invest in science, and deal with water pollution. How did he help invest in science? He was heavily invested in the space program. He was the one who said we have to beat the Russians to the moon. And even though he wasn't alive, we were the first country to put men on the moon in 1969. He also died in office, and his vice president, Lyndon B. Johnson, his program was called the Great Society. And some people say his Great Society is more influential than the New Deal. Now, the thing that hurt Johnson was he inherited the Vietnam War. He wanted to focus on fixing America. He wanted to focus on domestic issues, unemployment, health and education, poverty, race relations. So he had this great vision called the Great Society, although he did not get to really see it come to fruition like he would have wanted because of Vietnam. These 4 presidents, you need to know them. They'll probably be in a listing question. For example, who were the 4 Democratic presidents during the era of cooperative federalism that helped see an increase in national government influence? List them and list their programs: New Deal, Fair Deal, New Frontier, Great Society. All right. So have you guys heard of the layer cake and marble cake illustration? Some political historian scientist came up with this illustration to help us understand the move from dual federalism to cooperative federalism. Under dual federalism, our government, our system was like a layer cake. You had clearly marked areas that were state and clearly marked areas that were federal, like a layer cake. You slice it open and you see a layer of chocolate and a layer of vanilla and a layer of butterscotch or whatever it might be, caramel. But they're not mixed, they're layered. And that's what we had with dual federalism. There were clearly marked areas for the federal government and clearly marked areas for the local and state governments. With cooperative federalism, we moved to a marble cake. And you can see that a marble cake is a mixture. The vanilla, the chocolate, the caramel is all mixed together. It makes a nice marbly design. And that's what happened with the cooperative federalism during this era. The programs and authority on each level of government are kind of mixed together as they work together to solve problems. There might be a diagram of these 2 cakes where there's blanks, and you have to like say, this is dual federalism, like a layer cake. This is cooperative federalism, like a marble cake, and then explain how they're different. So today we are in the marble cake time, although whatever the federalism is, let's say federalism is vanilla, you're going to see more vanilla than chocolate. Any questions on cooperative federalism? Now, if you'll look in your book with me, okay, if you'll start on page 82, I have a picture of it here on page 82. Or I'm sorry, I have a picture of page 82 on this slide right here. This is the top of page 82. You can see here that I have written with my own hand, fiscal federalism. This is the top of page 82. This is a sub point underneath your main point, number 2, of cooperative federalism. During this time, especially under the Johnson era with the Great Society, the government started offering grants, that is money, that states and local communities, local schools, things like that could apply for. So we call that fiscal federalism. Fiscal has to do with finances. So you need to know that. And even though the term fiscal federalism is not in the book, until you write it in there or put it in your notes, what you need to know about that is basically it is a part of cooperative federalism in which the federal government is offering money to state and local governments to deal with issues. All right, now if you'll go over to page 83, at the bottom, you're going to find another federalism that is subpoint B under cooperative federalism. And that is regulated federalism. All right, do you see that? See that at the bottom of page 83? I did not take a picture of that, but it's already in your textbook. This is where the federal government, and just remember the name, and it'll help you remember, regulates. The federal government is passing laws and standards to regulate things in the states and in local communities. Or actually, they're passing things to regulate in the nation, and they also want states and local communities to follow along and pass those procedures or those guidelines. You're going to see this in health issues, right? You're going to see this with issues with the environment, right? The federal government, for example, has come up with regulations that car dealerships have to follow. So it cuts down on carbon emissions. And since many of those dealerships are located in states, it's got to be enforced on a state level too. So that's regulated federalism. So those are two subpoints under number 2, cooperative federalism. All righty, now we're going to focus on this is on page 87 of your book. Called New Federalism. So this is main point number 3, New Federalism. It could also be called contemporary federalism. But we're going to go with the term that's in your textbook, page 87, New Federalism, which really came about. So Johnson, his last term was in 68. President Nixon becomes president. He's a Republican. He, along with another Republican named Ronald Reagan, so Nixon and Reagan, these are, but there's really 4 Republican presidents, but these are the big 2. Excuse me. This is, we could just describe this where the executive branch of the federal government, the presidency, is wanting to kind of return more power back to the states. They're wanting to basically see a decentralization of the federal government. That's what we heard from Reagan. He said government is the problem. He said something to the effect, government does not fix the problem, government is the problem. So whereas in the cooperative federalism under those Democratic presidents, the federal government grew stronger and bigger, under these presidents, they have tried to decentralize and move back to giving the states more power, although the government has continued to grow, the federal government. All right, so you're going to need to read over those things and use the slides, so you know where to go to find this information for the test. We're going to go into chapter 4 and we're going to do a quick flyover of chapter 4. So you got to make sure you read it and you use your outline to help you understand where the things are that are going to be on the test. Chapter 4 is about civil liberties. And what we're talking about here are the individual rights or civil rights for citizens that protect individuals from state and federal government. It begins with the Bill of Rights, or the first 10 amendments. Remember, at the Constitutional Convention, they had hashed out a new constitution. They completely scrapped the Articles of Confederation. They come up with a new government where there's a stronger federal government. But there's also federalism, which divides it between federal and state governments. There's checks and balances, right? There's the 3 branches of government. There's all these tools, to all these safeguards to make sure power is diffused. But then there was that group at the convention called the Anti-Federalists. They were afraid that even though the Constitution was going to have these safeguards in it, that there's no Bill of Rights, and so they're going to abuse individuals. So in 1791, the Bill of Rights were drawn up and added to the Constitution. This protects your rights and my rights as American citizens. Here they are in a little illustration form. Let you look at those very briefly. For the purpose of our test, you will need to know about Amendment 1, 2, 10, Those are the main three. Let's look at the First Amendment. Now, I know there will be a question on this. You need to know what are the 5 freedoms that are protected in the First Amendment. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to peaceably assemble, freedom to petition the government. Those are the 5 freedoms in the First Amendment. This is an important amendment. And so we need to know those 5 things. Anyone who comes to America and becomes a citizen is free to practice any religion or no religion at all. And even those who practice, but there's even kind of a limit on that. For example, if you worship something that requires a human sacrifice, I'm just going off the top of my head here, that's illegal. You can't kill people. And so remember, that goes all the way back to Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, that we should be free until it infringes upon other people's property or person. But anyone can come and believe what they want to believe. There is no official United States religion. We have freedom of religion. We have freedom of speech, except, of course, you cannot say something that would cause violence. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Freedom of the press, freedom to assemble peacefully, freedom to petition the government. Know those 5 things. Now, there are 2 clauses that are contained within the freedom of religion. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. That is the Establishment Clause. The United States government cannot say, they cannot pass a law and declare this is the official religion of the United States. They cannot establish a religion. We were coming, many of our early forefathers were coming to America to escape a state religion. Protestants were coming over to escape from Catholic countries. Even Catholics came over and established Maryland as a Catholic state originally to get away from persecution from Protestants. So the Establishment Clause, and then the second part of the amendment says, Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof. That is, they cannot pass a law that says, for example, Muslims are not allowed to worship in the United States. So the free exercise clause, everybody is free to come over and exercise their religious beliefs according to their conscience, as long as you do not cause bodily harm to other people. Freedom of speech has a limit on it, and it is regulated by the Lemon Test of 1971. Please make sure you read about Lemon versus Kurtzman. This is one of those Supreme Court decisions that you need to know about. There's three things about this test that will help. I'm sorry, this isn't free speech. This is still on the freedom of religion. These three things will keep the government from interfering or advancing religion. So know the Lemon Test. You need to know this Supreme Court case, Schenck versus the US. This here deals with freedom of speech. During what they decided was people are not free to say things during a time of war that could threaten public order. This is the clear and present danger clause. So know that clause. The clear and present danger clause. The government has the right to restrict freedom of speech when public order is threatened. The Second Amendment is one that is still debated today, the right to bear arms. The argument for people against it today is that originally it was designed so that the colonists could keep their guns in case a foreign army, aka Britain, came and threatened them. So people have the right to keep and bear arms, and we can form a militia if we need to. So people argue today that that's what the original intent was. But here's some examples of more stricter gun control over the years. So I'm going to leave it there, and I'll have these slides up today. So let's go and review very quickly. I'm just going to use the textbook. And if you guys will look over your notes, and if I don't mention something that I mentioned during the course of these last 3 weeks, please remind me or ask me to clarify. From chapter 1, you need to know about equality of opportunity and the principles of liberty, democracy, and equality. Remember that triangle I put up on the at the first, called the Great Chain of Being? You will see that on the test with fill in the blanks. That is the mindset that we were breaking away from. That there are not different classes in society, but that before the law and politically, everybody is equal. From chapter 2, know about the 3 documents that was in one of your briefs: the Declaration, the Articles, and the Constitution. And I'm going to ask you about when those things were written, what were the issues going on at the time that brought about these different documents? For example, the Declaration was written because we believed that Britain was abusing their power. They were putting all these taxes on us. They were infringing upon our rights at the time as British subjects. And so the Declaration was to declare that we are breaking away from England. The Articles of Confederation were written during the Revolutionary War, and it was to help there be some kind of framework for the states to work together during that time. But it was very weak. It left control with all the states, And all it did was have a Congress that really had no teeth. And then the Constitution was written because the articles were really not working now that the war was over. And we had soldiers that had fought in the Revolutionary War who were homeless and were not getting their back pay. There were other issues about how to, how are we going to relate to foreign countries? What about the different states and the things that they are producing and trade and all that? So we needed a stronger federal government document, the Constitution. Know the three branches of the Constitution. Know the different safeguards that were put in the Constitution. That is federalism, checks and balances, three branches of government. There's a couple of other safeguards that we went over. Know about the Bill of Rights and why it's important. Again, know about the First, Second, and 10th Amendment. And then Chapter 3, federalism. Understand about those three main points that we talked about: dual federalism, 1789 to 1865, cooperative federalism, 1865 to 1937, new federalism, 1937 to today. Know about the different federalisms like fiscal federalism, regulated federalism, dual federalism, and laissez-faire capitalism. Know about the different clauses that we've talked about that are in the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, the new clauses we talked about today, the Establishment Clause, Free Exercise Clause, Commerce Clause, the Santa Clause. Know all those clauses. Just seeing if you're paying attention. Know about the different clauses, court cases. Know about the different court cases: McCulloch versus Maryland, Lemon versus Kurtzman, Plessy versus Ferguson, Gibbons versus Ogden, Schenck versus the US. These are important Supreme Court clauses, Supreme Court cases that helped the states at one point, but then started to help the national government at another point. Marble cake, layer cake, probably be a diagram about that. The 5 freedoms in the First Amendment. So is there anything that anyone had written down that I did not mention? So again, the test will be structured with fill in the blank, multiple choice, matching, fill in the diagrams or the illustrations, listing. And I know it sounds like everything in the first 4 chapters might be on there, but they won't. Then there'll be some questions that, like I mentioned, the Constitution, Declaration, articles, know what they are and about the times around them. You'll have to write a little bit about it, kind of like your briefs. There'll be a bonus. You can use your book You can use your notes and you can use the slides. Do not use the videos. Do not use Wikipedia or other online things. I can tell when someone has copied and pasted that stuff very easily. But you will be okay using your textbook notes and slides. Again, it will be available Sunday night at 9 p.m. Sunday the 5th. You will have until 11:59 Wednesday the 8th to get it turned in. We won't have class Monday because that's Labor Day. We will have class Wednesday, but don't ask me any questions about the test during class. You can email me a question, but don't ask a question during class time. So any questions? Now, before I let you go, on the parts of the test where you have to do some writing, if you do what I asked you, you're going to do great. But I love to see initiative. I love to see excellence and extra effort. And I will just tell you that I like to give extra points. So if you're showing extra effort, excellence, initiative, you'll probably see maybe some extra bonus points. Just saying. Raise the roof. There you go. Have a great weekend and a great holiday, and we'll see you on Wednesday.
Bye, Mr. Bings.
Don't rise. Yeah. Oh,
Bye.
bye. Bye.